Hello, everyone. This is one of the sessions we're going to talk about in the Job Search Summit. And then I have career coach Jen Narayan from Toronto. So she is in recruitment and she is also a career coach. She has helped a lot of clients come up with a plan, end up getting a job. We're going to be doing two sessions with her. One is about what are the mistakes you need to avoid while you are in a phone interview and tips and tricks that you can use to make an impression while you are on a phone call with an HR person or a recruiter. And the second session is about how do you find a job in Canada. Hello, Jen. Welcome to the program. How are you?
Hey, Raghu. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well.
Awesome.
Yourself?
Thanks a lot for coming here to spend your time and explain about two sessions. We're going to talk about two things. So first, tell me about how did you get into career coaching?
Sure. So career coaching was a bit of a natural evolution for me. My experience first started off in human resources, and then human resources evolved into very specifically talent acquisition and just, recruitment overall. I realized that really was my passion. And then that evolved career consulting, because naturally once you're in recruiting, people are coming to you asking for advice on resumes and how to find a job and tips and tricks on interviews. So this happened so frequently, and even to the point where friends and family were offering to pay me, but it felt uncomfortable taking money from them. But it gave me an idea, right? So I thought, let me just try it out and try being a career coach casually, see how it works out. And it's been growing for the past couple of years, and I'm just really enjoying it a lot. And it really summarizes all my experience in HR and recruitment.
All right. So you are based in Toronto, right?
Correct.
All right. So how do people reach out to you? So if somebody is in Toronto, they want to reach out to you for career coaching. What is the best way they can get to you?
Sure. They can go to my website, www.careerrealtalk.com, and all of my information is on there, the phone number, email, etc. And then they also can connect with me on LinkedIn, under my full name, Jen Narayan, and then searching Career Real Talk as well, and they can find me that way.
Awesome. All right. So let's specifically talk about the phone interview process.
Sure.
If you take about interview, there is a lot of small things that has to go right. Typically, somebody is applying for a job, the resume reaches somebody, they shortlisted HR as a phone screen with you. And it is possible to make a very good impression on the phone call. At the same time, there is an option that you can pretty much goof off the interview and then you don't hear back them at all. So you are here going to share us 5 to 10 tips about how to make sure that you get your phone interview right. Okay, so let's go. What's your first tip?
Exactly. Perfect. And it's funny you said goof up. So yes, all of my tips are based on the bloopers I've noticed my candidates do. So none of these are in a specific order. It's sort of just what came to me. The first one is that, I find people don't treat phone interviews as an in-person interview. So you want to give it the same type of value and respect you would as an in-person interview. And so what I mean by that is doing things like preparing, doing things like researching the company, researching the interviewer. So finding out, is this the HR person I'm speaking to? Is this the hiring manager I'm speaking to if it's a smaller company? So really just figuring out some of those details. It's very obvious to a trained recruiter when you're not prepared. Okay. So number one is treat it as an in-person interview and prepare.
All right. So let me have a follow-up question. You said two important things in there. One, researching the person and researching the company. What is the difference? How is it going to impact you, and what way that is going to help you? For example, I want to know about the person I'm going to talk to. How is that going to help in the phone interview?
Well, it might help you understand your audience a bit better. So you're not going to ask them questions like, what are the main projects that I'll be working on, or very specific questions that might make the recruiter feel like they're not doing a good job because they don't understand the details. But if you ask them things more about the company culture, for example, or things that are a bit more high level, you can have a better conversation. So the point is, when you understand who you're speaking to, you can gear your content and questions a little bit better that are more relatable.
All right, awesome. So essentially, do the exact work that you will do for an in-person interview, even for the phone interview.
Correct.
All right, awesome. Tip number two.
Tip number two is to find a distraction-free zone. So I speak to people, and sometimes even the mom or dad or whoever they're living with will pick up the phone and start dialing. And that sounds so 90s, but it still happens. Or just kids in the background, dogs barking. Point is, it's a little unprofessional. It seems like you haven't prepared for it.
Okay. I remembered my very first phone interview, Jen. I was talking from the apartment where I'm sharing the room with another student. And he walked in and then he started talking to me. He didn't realize that I was on a phone interview. The HR was from California. And she was like, "What's going on? Should we continue the conversation?" Essentially, it resulted in loss of the train of thoughts. So we're talking that even a small distraction can result in throwing you off. For me to even come back to normal, to feel comfortable to continue the conversation, interview was done by then.
That's a great example, and it sounds like she was a bit annoyed.
She was, and of course, as expected, I did not get to go to the next round. So from then on, what I started doing is that I started reserving a room in the library. It's very hard to make sure nobody walks in into the apartment, the kind of setup we had. So I would reserve a room in the library. I'll go there, so nobody's going to come and knock at me. So distraction free. That is good. All right.
Good example. So the third one, it's a little bit about being prepared, and it's being ready to answer difficult questions. So if I think of examples of difficult questions, tell me about yourself. So people think that's very easy because they will just talk about themselves, but then they realize when they're actually on the spot, it's very difficult because the sky's the limit. You can say anything, and then people start rambling. So you really want to master your tell me about yourself, and you can just think of it also as an elevator pitch. So summary of who you are and why you're relevant for this job.
All right. So
tell me about yourself. And sorry, just to add one more thing, understanding the STAR format. So you might be asked one or two behavioral questions, maybe not, maybe it's just in the interview, but sometimes it is asked on the phone interview. So being prepared to answer difficult questions and using the STAR technique, situation, task, action, result, is a good format to follow.
All right. Could you also tell any suggestion tips for the tell me about yourself? You can pretty much speak for 15 minutes or for an hour or maybe 2 minutes. What should be the content of tell me about yourself?
I would say keep it within 2 minutes if possible, but 2 to 3 minutes. And you want to say things like how many years of relevant experience you have, what is your current job and your biggest accomplishment, what your educational background is, and what you're looking for next. And when you talk about what you're looking for next, of course, you want to tie it in and connect it to the interview the job that you're being interviewed for.
Okay. All right. And what about, can you give an example of the STAR method? When it is used and how is it used?
So someone says, tell me about a time you had a difficult client. What people end up doing is they might start talking about the difficult client, and then that's it. And so what that person did is they just talked about the S, which is the task, which was the situation. Okay. Now, when you use the STAR format, situation, task, action, result, it then forces you to talk about the situation, which is giving context. And then after that, you're jumping into task, which means task and actions are similar. So it's basically explaining what are the steps that you took to resolve the situation. And then R is the result. So R is the positive impact. Because another thing that a lot of my candidates do is they talk about the situation, maybe they talk about some of the steps that they took, but then they leave you hanging and they don't even talk about the result and the positive outcome, which is actually what we're looking for. We're looking for how did you make a negative situation turn positive? Okay.
And this is something that can be done in the phone interview as well as an in-person interview, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So what is the next tip that you got?
Sure. The next one is dress the part. And what I mean by that is if you're doing a phone interview, you probably will do better if you're not in your pajamas. And when you're wearing your pajamas, you're in a more relaxed, comfortable mood. And that might be a little too nonchalant, and it might come out in your messaging. So I don't suggest, going to the 9 and wearing a suit and tie or, what I really mean is maybe it's just business casual. Maybe it just means wearing jeans and a nice sweater, but something that sort of elevates your mood and your professionalism versus your pajamas.
All right.
Okay.
I have done that.
Yeah.
I have done that, and it kind of gives you not a serious feel. It does not, like if you're in your pajamas and then you're taking the call, there is something off about that, that you are not sitting yourself. There is a difference in when you wear a suit or you're in a formals. Most of the times, some of them might even feel uncomfortable, right? But if I'm wearing a suit and then even if I do this interview, I feel like kind of odd because but that gives you an edge. I feel that personally, it feels that I'm at that age. I have to perform. This occasion demands this sort of attitude that you have to bring out, and probably the kind of clothes and dress you wear will bring that out. I've experienced that, but that's a very good tip, Jen. All
Good.
right.
I'm glad it was helpful. So the other one is take notes. And again, it's a sub point of being prepared and treating it like an in-person interview, because some things can be mentioned that are great follow-ups if, and hopefully you do get called in for the second interview and you can branch off that. So again, it really comes back to treating it as a full-on interview and then taking notes where necessary.
Okay.
So maybe it'll help you create some really effective, powerful questions to follow up on at the end of your in-person interview.
All right. So you mentioned about follow-up. Um, how does somebody, maybe I'll come to that towards the end. Sure. I want to ask, which is, how do you ask an effective follow-up question towards the end of the interview? So I will come to that, but let's continue to the next one. After taking notes, what else one should do?
Sure. So now we're on number 6. Number 6 would be mimicking their energy. And by mimicking their energy, it helps to reduce your nerves as well, right? So if you're on the call and you're feeling really nervous, that if you sort of have the mindset to mimic their energy, you might forget about your nerves. So what's really important about this is that, you know, some recruiters, let's say you're speaking to a recruiter who's super introverted, you know, a little bit more quiet, a little bit more calm, and you are very expressive. That might seem a little bit abrasive to that person, and it might make them think that they don't like you as much, which is unfortunate, and hopefully they don't make that judgment. But the point is, if you mimic their energy, you're sort of on the same playing field as them. And again, the second purpose is that it reduces the nerves.
So does it mean it's how you speak as well as if they are speaking slowly, we also have to kind of slow down to match their tone? Does that mean mimicking the energy? Or
yeah, so energy would be, you know, the type of enthusiasm you have. So maybe your tone and even your voice level. I think those are the most important on the phone, right? Tone and voice level. Body language obviously wouldn't really be picked up on it, but you still can feel body language a little bit. But tone and energy for sure.
Okay, all right, interesting tip. I did not know about that.
Yeah.
All right, so
that's what I'm here for.
Next one.
So number 7, I have as being prepared to talk about salary. And so salary expectations rather. So I speak to a lot of people who say, oh, I haven't even thought about that. And then, you know, they have to kind of go through the processing in their mind and think about what they're making and then what they want. And then they might just blurt out a number. So maybe they blurt out a number that sells themselves short. But then it sort of almost locks you into that number, because these are the notes that are being passed on to the hiring manager, and they might bring you in based on this number. Or they might think that that's really low. Maybe they're not really as valuable as I might have thought they were. So you never know. But the point is, you want to know your number before and give a range, so that way you're prepared to answer the question.
Okay. All right. Maybe we can touch upon how do you find that range after we go through this one.
Sure. Yeah. So number 8 is make sure your phone is charged. I've had too many people have just cut off randomly, abruptly. And then by the time they go back to their charger and all of that stuff, I'm on to the next call. So
all right. Okay, next one.
Stand up and smile. So when you stand up, you are more assertive. And again, it helps with someone who is maybe has more of a bit of a nervous personality around phone interviews or interviews in general. So if you're more of a nervous person, I would say perhaps standing up would make you feel more confident and assertive. It might make others feel nervous, so you'd have to try it out and test it out. But I think that's a really powerful tip, because it's all about body language too. Even if they're not picking up on it, you're empowering the body language and your energy empowers it.
So when you say smile, which is not like real smile, but speak with the pleasing, like where you smile and speak, right? Don't feel pressure, don't feel rigid. So having standing up and then smiling will just make you give that bit of relaxed feeling. So
Right.
that,
And I think that's a good point that you clarified, because if you were to take it too literally and smile the whole time, it might no longer mimic their energy, and it might make you come across perhaps fake if it's overused, right? So that's a good point. So maybe not smiling the full time, but you're just having a more pleasant personality, versus I've had people who come across a little bit more melancholy and a little bit more down just because they're doing probably the opposite.
okay, all right. I remember one of the things Tony Robbins used to say is when you're feeling down, you have to get moving. Just the movement of your body, getting some physical activity will give you a different kind of feel that you can get out of that negative cycle that you have. Maybe that similar to that, right? Interview, stand up, walk around.
Exactly. Standing up is a like bare bones of what he's talking about, but definitely on the same page.
Same page. Okay, all right. Next one.
The last one is a thank you note. And so thank you notes are usually considered to do more for in-person interview. But if you really thought that this was a really good role for you, like, I'm not suggesting you have a thank you note for every single phone interview. The ones that really spark joy, you feel like you're a shoo-in, your experience is so relevant, and you have a really good chance. And maybe, you never know, maybe that recruiter had 5 people that they spoke to and they can only bring 3 in, and maybe they're on the fence about you, but maybe you doing that can help, solidify that, this is someone I should bring in. So it doesn't hurt as long as it's casual. It's not over the top. There's no handwritten note necessary for a phone interview. Maybe just a message on LinkedIn, for example.
All right. So do you have more, or I think we are at 10?
Those are my 10.
Okay, awesome. Very good 10 tips. I got follow-up questions. Let's get to that. One, tell me about yourself. Could you be more specific on how should somebody who is in a college, they do not have any work experience, they are applying for an entry-level position. What is that they can tell in those 2 minutes that they can
Okay.
relate to the position? And what would you tell?
Let's use this format. And this isn't carved in stone. This is just a template that you can play around with. Let's call it past, present, future. Okay. So in the past, you're going to describe about your educational background, especially for the new grads, let's just say. So that's where they would start. So their educational background and how it's relevant. So, I took engineering and because I was really interested in blah, blah, right? Assuming that it's relevant to the role. And if they've had work experience, and for the past 10 years, I've been working in, this area, and my expertise is this. And again, I'm being vague because maybe I'll start with myself, so it's a little bit more specific. So past, present, future. So I have an educational background in human resources. I got this from Ryerson University. And for the past 15 years, I've been working in human resources, focusing on talent acquisition and career consulting. Okay.
Awesome.
That was my past.
Mm-hmm.
Now recently I've opened up my own career consulting firm, and this is what I'm very passionate about, and this is what I'm focusing my career on moving forward. And so what I'm looking for now is to gain new clients that support this career goal and that could help me build my portfolio and help me expand and gain more career consulting clients. So that was me going in for an interview for a career coaching position. So I talked about my past, and then I talked about my present, what I'm doing right now, and I talked about my future. And with my future, I talked about how this role helped me achieve my career goals.
All right. Simple formula, what you did in the past, what you're doing now, and where you want to go forward, and how this position is going to help you get there, or how you can help contribute to this position.
Exactly.
Awesome. And how can somebody, let's say they have done the phone interview, they've done the research of the person, the interview is done, then what should be in the thank you note? What can they tell in the thank you note that can move the needle to, what we want to bring them in person?
So I would thank them for their time, first and foremost. And secondly, I would let them know that you are like, confirm your interest. So thank you for their time, confirm your interest, and then confirm why you're interested. I'm really interested in this role. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more insight on the position. It excites me that there's a lot of projects that I could have the potential to work on, and it really is relevant to my past experience where I did this, and interested in hearing back on next steps. So thanking for their time, reiterating your interest, letting them know how you're very relevant for this role, and letting them know that you're interested in hearing about next steps.
One of the challenges I had, Jen, when I did this thank you note, I wanted to send thank you note, is the HR is setting up the call with the hiring manager or somebody in the team. I do not have their direct email ID to send it to. How do I handle the situation? And that's the first question. Second question is thank you note important? Should we send it?
It's a nice to have. And so when I was talking about the thank you note, one thing I mentioned was giving a thank you note only for those roles that really, really you think you have a good chance at and you're really excited for it. So if you have 15 interviews in a month, which is high, just an example, don't feel like you need to have 15. But if you have 15 interviews in a month, maybe there's only 2 that you're sending a thank you note. And to answer your question about how to find these folks, majority of these people will be on LinkedIn. So you would type in their full name and then the company. And if you didn't get their full name, maybe you just got their first name. Their name was Tina. So you write in Tina and you write Tina and then the company name, and you just do a bit of searching. So it shouldn't take too long. And this is something people would want to have the skill anyways, because you really want to be able to be proactive and follow up with people. And in your connection request to that person, you would place your thank you note in that message request.
Okay, all right. Would it be okay if I can send a thank you note to the HR and then tell them to forward it if I couldn't find the person to connect with in LinkedIn?
Definitely. So in your example, we're assuming that you also met with the hiring manager. So maybe this is after a face-to-face interview.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely appropriate. So I would send the message to whoever you can and ask them to forward it off. Or could you get their email address? And it's more just so that way you're giving them the option to not do the work for you and not forward it along. You're all requesting to do it yourself by giving them the option to send the email address or forward it along.
Okay, awesome. We also mentioned about the salary range. Mm-hmm. We have to mention, don't be blank or don't tell, I'm still thinking about it. How can somebody find the salary range for the position? And how do you make sure that you are not giving a low number or you're giving a higher number?
Right. So what I typically recommend is giving a range, I would say between $5,000 to $7,000. So if your target range is, let's just go with an easy number of 100,000, maybe you say 95 to 105, maybe you give a bit of that range, but if 95 is completely not where you want to be, that's why I said the 7,000. So maybe 100,000 is what you're going for, but maybe 98 to 105. So just a little bit underneath your goal, because you won't really notice that on the paycheck after all the taxes are taken off. And then 105 in case you don't want to sell yourself short either. So that's really good. And how you can determine that number is by doing some research on websites like payscale.com, glassdoor.com, and just Googling it. So, typing out your, how much does a marketing manager make in New York City, if that's where you're targeting at. And that will give you some great results. But Payscale and Glassdoor are some sites that I do recommend my clients use.
And most of the clients that you work are based out of Canada, right? So these 2 sites are still valid for the employers in Canada as well?
In the US and Canada, correct.
Wow, awesome. All right. So here in the US, that is the site, Payscale and Glassdoor, 2 sites where you can pretty much tell somebody is reporting their salaries. Good to know that the same thing can be done in Canada as well. All right. So we touched upon tips for phone interviews and specifically what to do and what not to do. And is there anything else after the phone interview is done and you send the thank you note the candidate should do or should not do while they are in this waiting phase?
I would not follow up a second time. I would just let it be. I mean, to be honest, if, as hard as this may sound to hear, if they're interested in you, that they won't forget about you. So I wouldn't follow up more than once. If it's a face-to-face interview and you're really anxious for feedback, yes, you can follow up twice. My main tip that I give to my clients that work with me one-on-one is I tell them to keep on moving. Don't get hung up on, even if it's a second interview or a third interview, doesn't matter what stage it is, don't assume that this is going to work. Of course, you're going in with a positive attitude that it could work, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. So that's my main tip, is to keep on going and to keep applying, and don't let it get to you that you can take a break now and not stop applying because you have some interviews lined up.
That's a good tip. Do you have an idea or suggestion of how long one can wait and then say, you know what, this is not going to work out based on your experience? Typically, how long does it take to hear back after the phone interview is done?
Oh, unfortunately, that's such a long range. It really depends, because there's so many internal things happening where the role gets put on hold, or they have to wait to meet this other candidate who's on vacation for 3 weeks, or the hiring manager's on vacation. So, there really is, it's been, one role took me 3 to 4 months to fill, and it was the first candidate that I had presented that got the job 4 months back. So the point is, if you're interested,
the hiring process?
Wow. This is a worst case scenario, but my point is that not to lose hope, but don't get attached to the results. So go in for the interview, do your best, and move on. And they'll call you back if it's important, because you could be waiting 3 months, and that might not be realistic to wait. So you want to keep going, and you never know. You might think this is the perfect job for you, but you keep on applying and you might find something better.
All right. Awesome. So that was good set of tips for phone interview, what to do, what not to do, and move on. I think the highlight is the moving on. I have been in interviews, Jen, where I'm just literally waiting, looking at the phone. Did I get a missed call, or is there a voicemail in there, or did I get an email? Then eventually you will move on. But having that mindset earlier in the process, I think that's the key, so that not every interview results in a job offer, right?
Right. You're only looking for one job. So it might take you 15 to 20 interviews to find that one job. So don't feel upset that you might have received, 14 rejections, because that's not really what it is. You're only looking for one job, and you have to keep that in mind, and the perfect match is going to be mutual.
How should a candidate take about the rejections? Getting rejection after rejections. What do you tell to your clients when they think they are good fit for the position, but it's been rejections, or the resume is not even going through?
I would like that person to analyze what stage they're being rejected at. For example, is it most often that they're not even getting a call back, number one? Or is it most often that they're not getting a call back after the phone interview or the first interview? So that's why I always recommend my clients track their jobs, every job that they apply to, and then what stage they fall off at, because then they can have a holistic overview of what's happening and really, look deep into where they might need some coaching. So for some people, if they're not getting any callbacks, we got to talk about your resume and your LinkedIn profile and cover letter, for example. Or do we need to talk about your interviewing skills, and do we need to better coach you on how to prepare for interviews? So those are usually the two main reasons. The third reason is also that maybe you are a more junior candidate applying to very senior roles. Your profile is attractive, so they call you in, and maybe you're not getting called back because there's someone who they deem a bit better fit. And if that's the case, that's not a bad thing, because you want to work for a company that appreciates your values and your positioning in your career. So most of it is not really a bad thing, but in most cases, it's an opportunity to improve on yourself.
Okay. You mentioned about identifying what's going wrong and then working on that. Within that, interviewing skills. So we will touch upon that interviewing skills in the second session when we talk about networking as well. But I think this is a good set of tips about phone interview and what to do, what not to do. Thank you, Jen. We will also do the next session, continuing this. And folks who are listening to this one, We are also having another session with Jen. She's going to specifically talk about networking, job search process in general in Canada, and her background as well in terms of how she does recruiting. From her recruiter point of view, she is headhunting candidates. So we can get insights into what she does so that as an applicant, you can get tips on reverse engineer the process for your advantage. So that's what we will do in the next session.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Jen.